Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.
State Representative David Steffen of Howard is a Republican seeking re-election in the 4th Assembly District. David, welcome back to WisconsinEye.
Thank you.
You have led efforts to try to relocate the Green Bay prison. That efforts has been around for a while, but nothing's going forward. Update us on where it stands and what are you recommending to happen next?
We did make some progress this last session in the state budget. I was able to convince my colleagues and the entire Joint Finance Committee to allow for $5 million to be allocated for the purchase of the land for the new facility and to pay for the initial infrastructure. Sadly, the governor had a different idea on how to use that $5 million, and he stripped the language and took the money. So we're going to be in a holding pattern for yet another 2 years. And just so it's clear, that facility is 122 years old. It is the most unsafe prison in the state of Wisconsin. It has the most prisoner on staff assaults in the entire state, and it is at 145% capacity. So we have an unsafe, incredibly expensive operation that is not meeting the needs of the inmates, the workers, the state, and it's time to make a better solution for the taxpayers as well as the staff and inmates.
Are you still at the urging another prison be built somewhere in Brown County?
In Brown County or the surrounding area, yes. And that makes sense from a workforce perspective. It is not easy finding guards to work in a maximum security facility. And so while we have those men and women who are willing to serve, let's make sure we use them. But we can do this in a way, one, that saves the taxpayers $100 million over 10 years, and two, has a much better emphasis on recidivism reduction because 90% of those maximum security inmates are going to be back in our community. So we need to have programming in there that is focused on community and career readiness, and that just doesn't exist right now.
Okay, let's talk about a budget issue related to the pandemic. We were okay in the last fiscal year. The Fiscal Bureau said everybody's worried about the budget potential shortfalls in the current fiscal year. I'm making up a number. If we're $1 billion short, what would be your approach to filling that shortfall?
Well, thankfully, I don't think we're going to be $1 billion short. But here's what the situation that we're generally in is we have, at least for the 6 years I've served, we've been very modest with the increases that we have put into state government as a whole in case something like this ever happened, including developing a rainy day fund of close to $700 million at this point. And guess what? It's raining. And so that $700 million is almost going to certainly be tapped to a significant amount. Here's the way we're likely going to have to address that is to freeze all spending for the next budget. That is a very prudent thing to do going forward. And I think that that's something that the entire state would get behind. But here's the most important thing. We cannot raise taxes. We cannot raise taxes when people are losing their jobs on unemployment. The economy is on shaky ground, so we cannot raise taxes as a part of this next budget.
Well, okay, you're talking the next budget. The role that hospitals have played in Wisconsin and nationally in treating COVID-19 patients, do hospitals deserve an even greater priority in the next budget that they may have in the current one, sir?
Well, at this point, I would say no. We'll have to see, but I can tell you that, a couple months ago, I would have a different tune. We have 4 hospitals in the Green Bay area, and at least one, maybe 2 of them was concerned about possibly going bankrupt if things were going to be continuing for an extended period of time. Thankfully, we've started to open things up, and there's some opportunities for them to start generating revenue. The great news is that in a bipartisan fashion, we've been able to be supportive of the governor in his allocations of the CARES Act, which has over $1 billion that is going to healthcare systems, including hospitals and nursing homes.
Do you like Representative Bourne and Senator Kappinga's bill that says if you're an organization that has adopted COVID-19 protocols to protect your patients, employees, and customers, you would be immune from a COVID lawsuit?
I absolutely am. In fact, I immediately co-sponsored that bill to join them in this effort. We can't have, ambulance chasing type trial lawyers getting on this to try to sue every company because someone got sick at their restaurant, at their bar, at their place of employment. It is the wrong thing to do. And so I'm 100% behind that bill.
Looking at the positive numbers of COVID-19 in Brown County, although there have been clusters, including in the prison, on September 28th, the governor has to decide, continue to extend the statewide mask edict or let it lapse. What's your opinion?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I am very pro face mask. I have more face masks than I have pants. I have them. I wear them. And both pants and face masks, by the way. But when it comes to face masks, the mandate, unfortunately, did not work as planned, and in terms of its effectiveness. And some people turned away from it because they felt it was a partisan issue. But when it comes to compliance, I think what we got is what we're going to have. There wasn't a big uptick from when it was a recommended thing, 2 months ago. And I don't think it's going to change going forward. It's not an enforceable or enforced mandate. So I think we have local governments, counties make decisions if they want, which I would support. But the statewide mandate, it really is just a piece of paper, and all it does is upset a few people.
The governor's proposal for a People's Maps Commission to draw the next congressional legislative district lines. The Constitution says the party in power. Your thoughts on the governor's proposal?
There's only two things in the state constitution that I am required to do. One is vote, and two is draw the maps. I am not able to abdicate that responsibility to anyone. That's why we have a representative government, and that's why I'm elected. Is it a tough decision? Yes. Is it one that I should be informed by my constituents and by groups and thoughts? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I am their representative to make those very difficult decisions. And I take it seriously. I take it with great humility. But at the end of the day, the responsibility falls to the legislature under the Constitution. And I took an oath to support and honor that Constitution.
The debate over the last 3-4 months nationally over policing reforms. The governor's got 9 bills. Senator Van Wongaard's got 8. The speaker's going to form a task force. The police union, the Statewide Police Association has its own. What, if any, specific policing reforms do you think should become law?
First, specifically, one is I'm actually adding to that, which is to allow legal resident non-citizens to be eligible to be police officers. Primarily, we're talking about DACA individuals. They can be state patrol officers. They can serve in the United States military, but they can't be our police officers. So that's one of them that we can certainly look at. Generally, these fall into 3 buckets: recruiting, training, and accountability. And there's a lot of opportunity to do things on all 3 of those. We got to get even more and better people into our positions. We have a policing shortfall. We don't have enough police officers filling those positions. Training, many of these things, for example, the chokeholds issue. That's something that I'm not even familiar with a single police department in the state that actually allows that, but that's something we can work on. And then strict accountability. One of the things that Senator Wongaard has is to have almost like a TSA style mechanism of exterior group evaluating these types of issues. So it's not the police department, it's not the mayor who's evaluating these incidents, but it's a separate organization that's independent to evaluate. Those are the types of things we can support. But here's the important thing. We need to do this in a thoughtful and inclusive way. It can't be, I'm the governor, I'm pulling 9 bills out of a hat, come down here next week and vote on them. That's not the way we do anything in Madison, and that's not the way we should reform the policing situation.
As states around Wisconsin legalize medical and recreational marijuana, has your position changed?
Actually, it has, and part of it's just because, kind of like in construction, you should measure twice, cut once. And we've taken that very deliberate approach to this issue. We started with CBD and CBD oil, making that available. How did that work? Was that going to be a problem? Well, guess what? It wasn't. Two, we evaluated what other states were doing, how it was working, especially with medical marijuana, options that worked, those that didn't. And I think there's a great opportunity. Now, Representative Felskowski has been a great leader on this issue. And I think she's come up with some great ideas. In general, what would probably happen is something where it's a non-combustible form, where it's either going to be a cream or an oil or a pill, something where it's not smoking a joint, okay? As relates to recreational, that's another full step. And I'm not willing to go there. I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I like taking these in steps so we can make sure it's measured and it's based on metrics, and we can evaluate how other states are winning and losing on this issue.
Property taxes are high in Wisconsin, which is why for more than 20 years, local governments and schools have had to live with caps and limits on property taxes. Yes. Should those limits be continued?
Well, like you started off with, 20 years is a long time, and anything that stays in law that long is very difficult to change. And I think it has provided some certainty for the taxpayers, and for that reason, I generally support it. However, I have been a leader with the League of Municipalities and have received recognition and award for them on this, is addressing it on the edges with the low growth and no growth communities. There are some communities who actually are, especially in rural areas, who are actually collapsing in terms of their economic impact. They obviously need some opportunity, some relief. And so I think that's an opportunity that we can actually make a difference for those individuals. There's also a more archaic part called the expenditure restraint program. There should be more municipalities that are eligible for that. Those are on the fringes of that whole debate, but they can be impactful for a lot of communities, including some of mine.
Is it time to give local governments new revenue options? Remember that Representative Goyke has a plan after a referendum. Milwaukee could levy a half-cent sales tax. Time to give local governments new revenue options to lessen their reliance on the property tax.
Well, they already have quite a few options, but I am open to more, only because I like the idea of referendums. I like the idea of local control, big supporter of that. And besides Green Bay, my other communities don't have a wheel tax, and that's one that's already readily available to all of them. So I am understanding and appreciative of local governments. I can tell you, in my area, we have some great local leaders who are very responsive and responsible to the people they serve. And so I think they deserve some more authority that comes with that responsibility.
The governor last year recommended raising the gas tax. That's been a choking issue for the last 4 years. He wants to raise it to stabilize how we pay for highways and bridges. Are you any closer to voting to raise the gas tax, sir?
I was already there. So as long as it's modest, it's thoughtful, putting in the indexing, that should have never been taken out, to be quite frank. And some people I've talked to who were part of that decision many, many years ago regret the fact that was a permanent removal of that indexing. You got to remember, I represent Lambeau Field. I want Chicago Bear fans and Minnesota Viking fans to be paying for gas in my community when they come to lose at Lambeau Field.
Well, on that note, you think you Packer fans will get a chance to actually sit in Lambeau Field this season?
Well, I'm a season ticket holder, and so I'm anxiously wait to see if that opportunity presents itself. It's a different experience. It's a different world up here. Not having fans, not having the tailgate parties, which is part of the vibrancy and, by the way, economic vitality of our community. So it's a bigger issue than just having fans in the stadium. It is part of the lifeblood of our economy up here. So we are very anxious to get back to football. I'm ready for some football, and I think the rest of the state is too.
Just two final questions. If a school board or local government wants to approve a major public works project, should they have to give a preference to Wisconsin businesses?
Well, I believe in the free market, and I can tell you that I struggle with that notion of paying more for something that you could possibly pay less. So I'd have to be convinced on that. And one of the other things I'd be concerned about is that reciprocity may not exist or may exist in other states. So it really is a complicated issue, but in general, I tell you what, I like the idea the lowest price wins when it comes to taxpayer money being spent.
You want to highlight any differences between you and your opponent on November 3?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, is I've made it an incredible effort my 6 years to develop my positions and have them be informed by meeting with people, and that one-on-one in the coffee shops and in the communities and listening sessions and going door to door, even in this COVID environment, but doing so safely. And my opponent, from what I can tell, is really doing it from her home. And I don't know how you can ever be a good legislator without knowing the district and knowing the people. So that's a big difference. And then the other thing I would say is that her positions as it relates to welfare expansion and somewhat controversial positions relating to law enforcement I think are incredibly differences of opinion and position between the two of us.
State Representative David Steffen of Howard is a Republican seeking re-election in the 4th Assembly District. The election is November 3. Dave, thanks for talking to WisconsinEye.
Great. Thank you.
Go Pack Go, right?
Go Pack Go.
Campaign 2020 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Quick Trip, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Wisconsin Operating Engineers Local 139.